All right, everyone, we start off today talking about that elk statue over in Portland, Oregon. It's apparently about 100 years old, bronze statue of a big-ass elk that was made by some, I guess, local figure. Antifa and BLM were rioting, and they have a thing against statues, but now it's apparent that they've become, I think, trans-speciesist or something, and I guess elks are too respected. And we have elk supremacy now, so they decided to light a big-ass fire under it, burn the statue into its own footprint, and I believe successfully destroyed it, so that it's going to have to be, it's debris now. It's no longer a statue. So there's another historical piece that they've destroyed. I'm not sure what it has to do with white supremacy or police brutality. When last I checked, elks typically weren't white. They didn't have a police force, nor did they have any particular political views. I'm thinking maybe teal deer pissed them off or something like that. I don't know why. At this point, doesn't this just speak to the larger issue, though, that they're just full of complete fucking horse shit when they try to give a million reasons for why they're mad and why it's justified, why they're committing various acts of vandalism and violence? Like when the Democrats come and say, well, there are legitimate grievances here, like the half-assed Democrats will just leave it at that. They'll say, well, I don't like the vandalism, but they're right to be mad because reasons. Then like the standard liberals will say, well, we need to listen to BLM, we need more justice, no peace. And then the far left says, oh, it's great that they're destroying these evil white supremacist statues. Again, though, that doesn't explain some of the vandalism. If they were just being motivated by mud justice or something, whether you consider their motivations misplaced or not, I'm sure the average, like, tradcon probably doesn't think that there's any wider police brutality problem. Technically speaking, as far as racial discrimination, they'd be correct, by the way. There is no racial component to police brutality in the United States. It's interesting because I'm pretty sure that a professor who took part in a report proving that recently, didn't he get fired? I don't know. I'd have to look into the finer details of that. It happens all the time these days. I mean, it's hard to tell the truth when lies have become not only accepted, but everything else is intolerable. Like to a lot of people, they don't want to hear the truth because it makes them uncomfortable. It makes the middle-class soccer moms uncomfortable when you tell them about the truth about the political correctness because it makes them start thinking that they're racist because they've been primed to do so by the far left for their entire lives. That's basically what happens. But like Abe Lincoln statues, like they defaced an Abe Lincoln statue in the UK. They've attacked statues of Winston Churchill. Theodore Roosevelt didn't own slaves, was a progressive populist of the working class, actually, and the leftist by most standards economically. This was an elk, an animal. I'm not exactly sure, therefore, what the grievance is. Did they dislike the person who made the statue? Because I'll bet anything that not a single person in that crowd would have been able to identify the sculptor. They wouldn't have been able to identify what it celebrates. No, they just decided this is a statue, therefore it's evil. And apparently, unless it's a Marx statue, it was funny because there was a Babylon Bee bit the other day where they're like, oh, they're going to protect statues now by dressing them as Karl Marx. That might actually be crazy enough to work. It'd be really funny to start gluing fake beards onto these statues and put a little red plaque on the bottom that says communism or something like that, and they'll leave it alone. Or another joke is they put job applications all over the statue because these people don't want to get anywhere near those either. It'd be funny. I mean, come on. It's going to be... I want to hear just one liberal politician at some point disavow the acts that are going on here. Like, certainly, the elk statue doesn't represent slavery. It postdates that. It doesn't represent anything. It's an animal. It's apparently, it was like some sort of thing to remind people that there used to be elk in the area or something. That's pretty innocuous. So keep in mind, you don't even have to... Originally, 2 years ago, Trump weighed in on this, which was the funny part, and said, well, they're going to go for Thomas Jefferson next. He was correct. Fact check, absolutely true. They said they wanted to remove the statues linked to the Confederacy, to slavery. Confederate war memorials, essentially. And a lot of people in middle America rolled over and said, okay, whatever, because they didn't want to be labeled racist. The problem is that there's nothing racist about Teddy Roosevelt or Abe Lincoln or an elk. So these people have essentially thrown out their own initial argument. Again, the leftover stretching, as it always does, priming itself, by the way, to piss off the silent majority in November. I would warn the liberals this. Your embracing of far-left violence, of BLM, which has been slightly distanced from because they criticized Israel, which is hysterical. Yeah, it's okay if you kill people. It's okay if you burn statues. It's okay if you break windows and loot cars. That's all fine, BLM. We'll take our money. Oh my God, you criticized Israel? That's a bridge too far. Oh my God, we're distancing. The movement's been hijacked is their new line, I believe, from multiple corporations that are now divesting in BLM as we speak. Very, very interesting. There was a whole news report about it the other day. Very funny to me now. It's interesting where the priorities are. Simple criticism of a foreign nation, bad. Burning things and looting and shooting each other? Perfectly fine. It's a youthful indiscretion, would say the Democrats. I want to see these people explain their warped views. How can people justify supporting this sort of behavior, especially when it has morphed over time, over not a very long period of time, over only like 3 years? It's more from ire at the historical remnant of slavery, to police brutality, to politics in general, now to a fucking elk, a bronze statue of an animal that can neither speak, nor ever had any political views, nor had a police force. It's a piece of bronze, an inanimate object representing an animal. I guess that's too edgy. They're going to have to replace it with a different kind of animal. They're going to, I guess, you have to have animal equality now, so they need affirmative action. They'll have to have a statue of the whole zoo. Be very interesting when it's financed. What they should do is they should say, fuck the elk statue. They should replace it with a statue of Thomas Jefferson or something. Put up a Teddy Roosevelt statue. Put up a statue to deliberately frighten and incense the far left. What we should be doing is building more statues. We should say, okay, every time that Abe Lincoln gets vandalized and we have to remove Abe Lincoln's bust because these people are historically illiterate, we'll put up one of, I don't know, someone that they hate 10 times more. We'll get Woodrow Wilson up there. Not really worth celebrating, but just to piss them off, I suppose. We'll get a statue of Napoleon Bonaparte. we'll put up... Why don't we make 10 times as many statues? You know, one of the symbols of a great society is that it wastes... I hate to say this, historically speaking, the Romans, the Egyptians, everyone does. Great nations waste some of their manpower and resources on building things that are purely for aesthetic and political purposes. It's basically a dickwag. It's basically a monument to a nation's ego. But it's one of the symbols of a nation succeeding. When they start toppling statues, it's usually a sign of decline, or it's a sign of social alienation-related unrest as the one we see now. Build more statues. Counteract them by making it clear that they can never win. We can build more statues. You know, the shooting of individuals is more important than a few statues toppled. Half the time these statues are just re-erected anyway. Why don't you just put up a little bit of barbed wire around them? You just have a little moat around them so that they can't approach too closely. It's terrible that we have to do that as a society, but you know, if these people want to act like goofballs, if they want to act like lunatics, you know, or just put traps around them to capture these Antifa and BLM thugs. We'll have little holes open up, and then it, you know, has like bars above it, and then we can cart them off to jail or something. Why not put up... I've got a great idea. This is actually amazing. Yeah, you should promulgate this to police forces. Make fake statues out of like zinc or something that costs like 10 bucks. Make fake statues and then make fake astroturfed social media posts saying, this statue represents white supremacy. Everyone gather here to burn it. Meanwhile, the surrounding buildings, they're all full of cops waiting to spring the trap and take them all off to jail. Why don't we do that? Just round them up like that. You can even recycle the statues. Just bake a few zinc statues of Teddy Roosevelt, astroturf a bunch of shit from people who will be blissfully unaware that it's not a real statue, that it's basically a phony, and then grab them that way. Have a little bust. Or you can make like murals or something. Have somebody make a Teddy Roosevelt mural, like basically spray painted or something, and when leftists come along and get incensed because you've made social media posts, then you can nab them. Very cheap, very effective. You can get the drop on them. They'll be none the wiser, and then they can spend some time in jail for attempted vandalism or for assault or whatever else they do, resisting arrest. Scare them straight. Put them in the clink for a month and see what happens to them. See what happens when they're around real tough people, as opposed to their piss pants, fucking soylent drinking, gated community middle class trust funders. That'd be really, really funny. That's about all. Peace out.